the 30s and 40s, Mandrake was one of the top acts in the world. Later, he broke attendance records in Las Vegas and Los Angeles, played the big theaters of Europe, even went to China and to India. The act was so elaborate, he needed 2 buses for the props and his 17 assistants.
I come from a family of travelers. My grandma and grandpa built a career in entertainment, moving from town to town, performing in grand theaters and nightclubs across the country and around the world.
For Mandrake, there were dozens, hundreds of swift currents. Although he'd played in some of the most famous theaters in the biggest cities and some of the most glamorous nightclubs, he was also happy to bring his show to small towns across North America.
I always loved rolling down the road, new city, new people, new adventures, and it was always exciting that way. And I really enjoyed living that way.
He crisscrossed the continent, and even in Hawaii, made headlines driving cars through town blindfolded.
Hotels became their homes across the country, and even raised their 4 children while on the road. Each child was born in a different state. My Uncle Ronald was born in Miami, Florida. My Uncle Leon Jr., was born in Chicago. My father was born in Dayton, Ohio. And my Aunt Julia was born in Portland, Oregon.
As we traveled, he made it an adventure for the kids. It wasn't just a chore, like, oh no, now we're riding from this point to the other point. He made it an adventure.
You never knew what was coming up, you know, what the next town held.
My father said he loved being on the road. He loved growing up on the road.
My first memories were of driving around the country in the backseat of a car, and my father singing songs.
And my father and my mother met each other while they were both traveling. They met in London, and my grandma traveled with her parents with vaudeville. While most parents encourage their children to go to university, my grandfather was against the idea. He believed in being self-taught, not being part of the system, not getting a job working for the man, but to work for yourself and be completely independent and self-sufficient, to educate yourself, read books, sharpen your skills, learn a little bit about a lot.
To be a magician, you have to know a little more about carpentry than any carpenter. And you got to know a little more about electricity than an electrical engineer. You're a jack of all trades.
He made the rules of his own life and hoped to instill the same mentality into his children. I didn't know those things about him until I was older, but I connect with the concept of cultivating personal sovereignty and independence in a world that encourages us to be dependent and obedient, compliant. And I think a lot of this mentality came from the fact that he lived most of his life on the open road, free as a bird. Before my grandpa passed away, he asked me what I wanted to do with my life. I was 16 years old and had fallen in love with photography. I told him I wanted to take my camera and hitchhike across the country and take pictures of the people I meet. He liked that I wanted to travel. He was about my age when he left home to join vaudeville. I never did hitchhike across the country, but I did take my camera downtown to the village where I met people from not only all over the country, but all over the world. Everyone flocked to Manhattan. All my needs were met in the city. I found inspiration, motivation, energy, diversity. People from all over the country and all over the world came here. And so, for the most part, I forgot about traveling, being in other places. But in 2005, I had an amazing opportunity to go across country in style, and my old feeling was reignited. Growing up in Manhattan, I always preferred to walk, and I never had a desire to drive a car, except one, to drive a giant 18-wheeler Mack truck. My mother was friends with a man named Thomas from Poland. He was an artist, a sweet man, who transported goods like Harley-Davidson motorcycles from coast to coast in his 18-wheeler. He invited me and my mom to tag along on his next job from the East Coast to the West Coast. It was a 1-week ride, chance of a lifetime.
Or something, and we got $12 on a mini, you know, and I had 17 minutes, so I had my 14. So, I'll get kept in down here. Just drive and drop your pup.
On the road, Thomas handed me the wheel. He knew I couldn't drive, so he put it on automatic and sort of hovered over the wheel as I drove. I drove for half an hour on the highway, and it was amazing. Almost like flying low above the freeway. The truck stops were cool, very friendly and clean and homey. We stopped at some of Thomas's favorite diners along the way, but my favorite stop on the road was in Wyoming at Devil's Tower National Monument. We arrived at night with 1,000,000 stars in the sky, and we walked through bushels of sage. I plucked some to burn later, and we laid down looking up at the constellations staring back down at us. An absolutely unforgettable moment. There is something about removing yourself from all the chatter and sounds and lights of the city and experiencing the different smells, the feel of the air, the breeze, a different kind of heat from the sun, a different shade of blue in the sky, seeing the birds, the lizards, the spiders, the dragonflies, navigating the different points of longitude and latitude on the maps. In August, I stayed in Paradise Palms in Las Vegas with 2 American Bulldog Mastiff show dogs, Pearl and Blue.
No, that's my team, mister. That's my team. That's mine.
And their showgirl extraordinaire mom, my old friend from New York.
Okay, ready? Ready. Sweet spot. We do need to get it.
TikTok video.
It's a really bad movie that I'm making. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't look at my... Okay, stop the video. I'm sorry.
Paradise Palms is a quiet little paradise with a golf course tucked behind the homes where the old mobsters would house their gumas in the 1970s. At least that's what the residents say. Some old musicians like Bobby Darin, Dionne Warwick, Dean Martin were residents in Paradise Palms back in the day. Joe Louis, world heavyweight boxing champion, and Hollywood actors like Donald Sutherland, Debbie Reynolds, and Johnny Carson. They were said to have houses there in the 1970s too. In Las Vegas, there are empty desert drives, the massive water dam, goats making their way up the mountains, and things to experience like the fact that my skin felt cold in 105-degree weather when I went swimming in the pool because of the dry desert air. Robert took us to Hoover Dam.
We're driving down in it now. And there's a really cool overpass.
And Beans took me hiking up Mount Charleston. Oh my gosh, here's another. Look at this guy. Wow, you're so special. Oh my gosh.
That's a different type of hummingbird that I've ever seen, though.
Right?
It almost looks like a bug.
Oh, I know. Oops. Hi, buddy. Come here. And I met his lovely friend Sage, who has fascinating stories about her family lineage. You never know who you're going to meet when you're moving around from one place to another. In July, I met a woman at the airport. She was a professional photographer coming from a job in Mexico. We bonded when she told me she was at the Liberty and Health Seminar in Phoenix, Arizona, and met Dr. Peter McCullough while she was there. And I told her I had written and directed the adaptation for Bobby Kennedy's book, which, of course, featured Dr. McCullough. We were both on our way to California. I was going to a wedding in Topanga, and she was going home to Palm Springs. But our flight was canceled, and so we became fast friends. We talked about travel and film and photography. The next month, she invited me to dinner with her relatives in Loma Linda and Laguna Niguel. They showed me their family albums. She has a large family, and they all grew up on a farm in Iowa. They learned to be completely self-sufficient, to make and mend their own clothes, tend to the animals, using, of course, all natural ingredients to make their food from scratch, and powerful home remedies for bodily health and well-being. It was inspiring. For them, it was completely normal. They were a religious family and very welcoming and loving. My new friend's brother, Bud, introduced me to an amazing book, a beautiful interpretation on the compassionate God. It was so aligned with my own spiritual relationship I had been cultivating during the last couple of years, but more seriously in the past few months. So this led to a sort of small impromptu Bible study discussion. My grandfather also owned acres of farmland on the beautiful private Orcas Island on the west coast in Washington. Orcas Island is tucked into the San Juan Islands, only accessible by boat or seaplane. While my grandfather traveled in the 30s and 40s, he rented the farm to a small family. He was married to his first wife at the time, and she wasn't able to have children, so he hadn't expected to have a family of his own. And eventually he gave the farm to his renters. They had a small child who was crippled, and so he decided they needed it more than he did. I always loved to travel alone, and quite spontaneously, at the beginning of October, I had a flight booked for the Middle East. I was going to the Mediterranean, to Cyprus, the birthplace of the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite, and then to Israel. I had already been to Israel a couple of times before, but I was excited to go by myself this time. The decision was spontaneous, without a lot of planning. I started to get an intense, panicked feeling about going. At the last minute, I decided to cancel. It's the first time that I ever canceled a flight in my life, let alone more than one flight. And less than 24 hours later, the news came out that Israel was bombed by the Hamas, and Bibi Netanyahu had quickly declared war. In 2020, the movie Nomadland came out. What was special about this movie is that most of the characters were not actors, but people who were actually living this lifestyle. It seemed to me an authentic picture, an authentic experience that truly allowed the beauty of human nature to be exposed.
I love this lifestyle. It is a lifestyle of freedom and beauty and connection to the earth.
And most of all, it was about community.
If society was throwing us away and sending us the workhorse out to the pasture, we workhorses had to gather together and take care of each other. And that's what this is all about.
It wasn't about loneliness or depravity. It was about freedom.
I think connecting to nature and to a real true community and tribe will make all the difference for you.
This is similar to the sort of community that my grandpa was working in when he traveled with vaudeville. Each time he went to a new town, he would meet new people, sometimes people in need, and he'd give them a temporary job on his show, help them build up their confidence, and then they'd each move on their own separate paths once again. So the movie made me think of my grandfather, but also his first wife and co-star Narda, Princess Narda. She had traveled with her own show as a dancer independently before meeting my grandpa, and then they traveled together, and then she continued on to travel after they divorced. She had strength, vibrance, and energy all the way up until her late 90s, a rich and talented soul. She was a kindred spirit. I consider her one of the greatest friendships of my life. I believe that man was meant to explore. He was meant to learn and expand and grow. And with life throwing so many curveballs and so many things to be so serious about, I think it is important to uplift ourselves. One thing I've noticed throughout the past year is that the true feeling of home really comes from within. And since it comes from within, that means home truly is where the heart is.
how cute this little guy is on my table? You are minuscule. You're a little hero, taking off with my empanada.